Y'all know what's going on. It's time for another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker. Check this out, y'all. I want to tell y'all this story, man, about this guy this guy, he wanted to be a part of this organization. It was an Aryan organization, and he was willing to do whatever he had to do to be a part of that organization, right? And it turns out that it was going to be one of those situations that was going to shake and shock the whole compound because this guy was willing to go all the way with it, right? And it's going to be ugly. This story is going to be ugly a little bit, y'all. It's going to be ugly. But I want you to listen to it. I want you to bear with me. I want you to listen to this because I want you to know how deep and dark a person's mind can get when it comes to, wanting to be accepted and wanting to be a part of something, right? It gets dark. It gets dark. And plenty of stories like this, maybe not as gruesome, but there are plenty of examples when it comes to people wanting to join gangs and organizations like that as to, how far they'll go to be accepted. This one just happens to be one that I was thinking about the other day, and I said, let me go ahead and share this one, right? So people can get a clear understanding of how dark it can get real quick, right? I call this episode Man on Fire. Check this story out, y'all. Years ago, right, at another facility, there was this guy, this white dude. He wanted to be a part of an Aryan organization. And he was willing to do whatever it takes. Whatever they wanted him to do, he was willing to do it. Now, again, I'm going to tell you, usually, you hear the stories that they want you to, kill somebody black or brown, or they want you to, you have to disown anybody that you have in your family that is part black or black altogether, whatever. They don't want you to have any association with that. And they try to have this, in my opinion, I don't know how they could prove it, this connection to, Europeans from the Caucasus Mountains and stuff like that right now. I don't know if any of that's true, but that's just stuff that I've heard over the years. But here's what I'm saying. In this situation, you had this young guy that wanted to be a part of the organization. And he worked on the yard crew. And on the yard crew, you mow the yards of the compound, of the prison. So you're all over the prison. You're all over the prison. You go everywhere, right? So the heads of this organization, they were all on max. But back in the day, when they would mow, when we would be outside in the rec pens locked into these cages, they would still allow them to mow and come up to the cages to talk. You know what I'm saying? And so that's how we would keep in contact with people on the compound. That's how we would know what's going on the compound, right? Whenever the guys would come over to mow, they would tell us what's going on. And sometimes they would pass stuff to us back and forth, through the gate, through the fence, right? And that's just what it was, okay? But anyway, this particular dude mowed the yards, right? And every now and then they would allow them, if they needed to use the restroom, they would allow them to come inside of the unit to use the restroom, right? Because they didn't have a porta potty out there and so on and so forth. So anyway, check this out. There was this black dude. He was the laundryman, right? And the laundryman worked inside of the building. He was housed on Max with us, right? You know what I'm saying? And he worked inside of the building. But anytime anybody would be escorted into the building, whether it had a max move, when they say a max move, meaning somebody is being escorted to and from a cell, they put them in chains, they would say max move, they yell it out, max move, and the person that would be out out working or whatever, they would have to go lock themselves in the nearest closet or shut the door so that person could be moved safely without threat of harm from anybody. You know what I mean? So the laundrymen, what they used to do before they started to lock them in, they would throw everything in the wash and dry, and then they would set outside of the little area that they washed the clothes in because it would get so hot in there. So they would sit outside there and then go back and forth in there, changing stuff from the washer to the dryer, from the dryer to the folding, and vice versa. You feel what I'm saying? Because it would get hot in that little room because of that wash and dryer going. So anyway, this particular black dude, he would always, when they yelled out Max Move or whatever, he would go into the room, but he would leave the door cracked. And every time somebody Aryan would come through, he'd get in an argument with him. And he'd call them all kind of crackers and this and that, and they would call him all kind of niggas and this and that. All that old kind of stuff, right? That's what went on back and forth between them. Now, the head of the Aryan group that this young white dude wanted to be a part of was one of these dudes that this black dude just kept having words with, right? Every time he came out. So he sent the kite out to his number 2 on the compound. They called it something else. I'm calling it number 2 just for the sake of the show. But he sent the kite out to his underlings, his subordinates, and told them, look, if dude want to be a part of this organization, tell him he got to put in work on this nigga back here. That's what he sent out there. So they plotted and planned to try to figure out what they were going to do, right? And it came down to, we're going to burn him up. We're going to burn him up. And now, let me explain to you how that came about. Remember I told you that this dude was on the yard crew and they mowed the yards, right? Well, back in the day, they didn't have electric mowers. And even though they have them today, they don't have them in the penitentiary. The lawn mowers that are used in here still use what? Gasoline. And back then, we also were allowed to do what? Smoke cigarettes. To smoke a cigarette, you need what? Matches. So this is what they plotted. Now, keep in mind, we're in prison, so we can't just run around with gasoline and matches. They don't allow that, right? But if the officer, after you've been working for them for a while, they might get a little lax, or whatever the case may be. Or they might turn their heads, or whatever the case may be. You know what I'm saying? Turn their head, not giving you permission, but they got to watch and look out for the whole crew, so they can't watch everybody at the same time. And if you're on something, you know, you got to just pick your time and then you try to get over on. So that's what happened. This Aryan dude, he had a pipe, a hose pipe, that he siphoned some of the gas out and put it in a balloon. So he's got gasoline in a balloon, right? So he waited until the day that he could get this dude, this black dude. So here we go. They come up over to the Max, and they're mowing. And he tells the officer, he said, officer, can I use the restroom? Now, dude is in there mowing. Dude is in there washing clothes, right? So the officer tells him, yeah. He comes to the front. He lets him in. They yell, Max Move, right? Which is not a Max Move, but they're basically letting you know somebody's coming through. So if you're out in the E-Pod, go in the room, lock the door, shut the door, right? So this black dude does what he normally does. He went into the room. He didn't shut the door all the way, right? So while he's in there, here comes the white dude walking by. He goes to the restroom, right? And the officer's walking with him. He got 2 officers walking. They're escorting him, and they walk into the restroom, and then they stand there at the front door of the restroom while he's inside the restroom and he's taking a leak or whatever the case may be. So when he comes out, and he has to walk right by the area where the laundromat is. So when he walks by real fast and quick before the officers could do anything, he snatched the door open and he squeezes the balloon and throws gas on him, and then he flicked a lighter and flicked it at him. It wasn't a match, a lighter, and threw it at him, right? This dude catches on fire. Now we're in the pod. All we see is a flame, and it's moving, right? And then it gets out of our eyesight where we can't see it. It's like something on fire out there. We didn't know it was a person. He's out there on fire. So the officers, you could see them, they jump on him and they get some blankets or something. They were putting him out. And then one of them grabbed a fire extinguisher and they were spraying him down to put him out. And I'm telling you, it was like you could hear him out there screaming. It sounded, I can't even describe it. I hadn't heard anything like that in my life at that point. This man was burnt from head to toe. Just that fast. So they apprehend, because the white dude, he can't get out of the building. It was like nowhere to run. He can't get away. So now they get him. They got him in handcuffs, whatever. The nurses, they got the black dude. They're getting him in the triage. They're getting ready to take him out to the hospital to treat him because he's got third-degree burns from head to toe, y'all. I'm trying to tell you, this pure gasoline with a lighter. Burnt him. But guess what? This white dude is now a member of this Aryan organization. And he's getting put on max. And he got charged with attempted murder. He didn't have that much time when he was first, in. He didn't have that much time. I think he had under 10, under 8, something like that. But he didn't have a lot of time. But because he wanted to be accepted so bad, he was willing to do whatever it took to become a part of this organization. And it cost him. He got put on max, and he got charged with attempted murder. I don't know how much time he ended up with because he was going back and forth to court. It ain't no way out. Ain't no way out. I don't know if they offered him a plea or not, but if they didn't offer him a plea, if he goes to court on it, he's going to get hit. But he's going to end up with more time. So what do you tell your family? What do you tell your family when you're in here, you make decisions, you join an organization to do things like that? What do you tell them? What do you tell them? Because the family, from what I understood, the family that he came from, they wasn't with that. So how did he become part of that? How did he become with that? It's darkness in here. That's how he became a part of it. That's how he became a part of it. He wanted to belong to something so bad, he was willing to dwell in the darkness. He was willing to dwell in the darkness. And he did. And he almost killed another person. He was in, let me see, the charge, if I'm not mistaken, the charge was like a property theft or something like that. This was not a violent person. But he had been told to do something, and he couldn't back out. And he chose to do it. And he set another man on fire and almost killed him. And that's part of the darkness that you have to deal with when you're in here. It's part of it. And you have to be willing to say no. If you want to be a part of something that's going to compromise your morals and values, the values that your parents raised you with, if they raised you right, then you might not want to do that. You might not want to come this way. Because that, I'm telling you, that's a real story. Dude got burnt up. Burnt up. You understand what I'm trying to tell you? Burnt up. When he came back from the hospital months later, because when he came back, if they left him in the clinic for a while, and then they brought him back to max because he was on max. But he was gone for 3, 4, 5 months. When they brought him back, he still had bandages on him. Still had bandages on him, from head to toe. They had to change him every day. He didn't even look like himself. He didn't even look like himself. Looked like a candle that had melted, man. Tell you now. But that's what happens to you. And he learned a valuable lesson too, to keep his mouth shut. Stop antagonizing people. But look what it cost him. It cost him his whole face, and his back, and his chest, and his arm, and his legs. Burnt up, disfigured. Yeah. Yeah. It's ugly, y'all. So think about that. Think about that when you want to live in this lifestyle. Yeah, you say you're about this life. Huh. What? This has been another episode of Doing Time with Joe. I'm your host, Joe Baker, and I say peace, y'all.